We're continuing our look at improving the value chain. In our previous video, we looked at quality assurance. So now let's look at lean manufacturing, minimizing the waste and maximizing the productivity in order to maximize the value for our customers. So let's just go through our slides here. So when we talk about just-in-time or lean manufacturing, and today you also hear this called Lean Six Sigma, and the whole point of these is to eliminate 8 wastes. So the 8 wastes are overproduction, so us making more product than we need. If we properly forecast demand, so we know exactly how much customers want from us, then we won't need to produce a ton of excess and have this surplus and then have to store it and have to be concerned that it's going to lose value. So if we are manufacturing cars, we want to forecast demand to make sure that we are making just enough F-150s for the amount that customers will buy, because if we make too much, then that surplus of vehicles puts downward pressure on prices and we don't make as much money off of it, or it sits on the lot and starts to depreciate, loses value. And of course, nobody wants the old model of an F-150 when we start to release the next year's version. So one waste we want to reduce is overproduction. The other thing we want to reduce is unnecessary inventory. So if we can look at what do we need to make our good and provide our service, and we get just what we need of that. So the idea behind just in time is that your inventory, the materials you need, arrive just when you need them. This reduces the cost of having to store the materials. So you have a tight partnership with your supplier and a way then to communicate with them exactly how much you're going to need and when, so it arrives just when you need it. We also look at our processes and the work in process that we have. So if we're doing a design, let's say here we've talked about production layouts before. One of the challenges with a process layout, that's the one you see in B here, is that there is a lot of work in process because we are moving the work product. So if it's a hospital, the person who is injured or sick is being moved between the x-ray and the emergency room. And so there's a lot of people being moved around. And the problem is that if we think about a hospital, these people who are waiting to be moved in to get an x-ray or to see a doctor, taking up space, that work in process creates some issues in the flow and provision of our services. So if we're looking at eliminate waste with our just-in-time or lean manufacturing, we're going to try to get away from that process layout where we have our work in process. And so that in a hospital is the injured person being moved around. Or if it's an office space, then think about all of the paperwork that's moving back and forth between people. That takes time as it moves back and forth. Well, the other challenge we have is that we have waiting. So if you're in the hospital and you're waiting to move the person on the gurney to the x-ray, there's a lot of standing around waiting for the x-ray machine to be available. That work in process is just sitting there. If we looked instead at a flow that is more of a product layout, like you're seeing here in D, where you can think of it more as an assembly line, if we have a part of the process that is slowing everything else down, so some kind of bottleneck in the system, that's also going to cause there to be waiting, right? You can't move the material to the next step in the process because we're waiting for the equipment to become available. And so we start to see kind of a stockpile right around the bottleneck in the process. So if you have machines that are waiting to do work, if you have people who are waiting to do work, if they are sitting idle, you are paying them, but they are not contributing to output. And so this costs you money. So the idea with the just-in-time or lean manufacturing is we want to have this nice steady flow through our process so that we don't have people and machines sitting idle, and we don't have a bunch of work in process and materials that are just piling up. We also don't want any unnecessary transportation. So if we're constantly moving our work in process, our materials around, that's costing us time and money. So we want to streamline that process. So we want to have more efficient work methods in moving the materials and also in that process flow diagram. So is it possible that we can take out steps in the process flow diagram and just keep the ones that have value added? So rather than doing things multiple times, can we streamline the process? We also don't want to have over-processing. We talk about over-processing. We're talking about doing things that don't add value, or where we're redoing things multiple times. So again, coming back to that process flow in terms of streamlining the process so that our methods are more efficient, but then we're also not doing things that don't add value. And then we want to make sure we're not producing defective products, because if we make products that have issues with them, so we're making tables and the screws that connect the legs are just too close to the edge, and so the wood is splintering, it has to be redone. We have to reseat the leg onto the tabletop. Well, then we're going to have to over-process, because we're going to have to go back and redo it. And it's going to be inefficient work methods because we're doing it more than once. So if we can prevent the defects before they happen and not produce defective products, then we're going to be more efficient. We're not going to have to redo things, and we're not going to have to produce extra just in case. So part of the overproduction of goods can happen when you are making products that, if there's a lot of issues with them, if they tend to be defective, then we tend to make extra just in case so we can throw away the defective ones. Well, this is wasteful. So with just-in-time or lean manufacturing, we want to have quality assurance. We want to prevent the defects before they happen and have proper forecasting. So we make exactly what we need, and we only bring in the inventory and raw materials exactly what we need. And the steps in our process are efficient. We're not over-processing because we're only doing the steps that we need. And the last piece in terms of just-in-time or lean manufacturing is the underutilization of employee knowledges and skills. So are we effectively using the training, the talent of our people to their best ability, to what's most value added within our organization? We talked in earlier videos about how organizations that can be highly centralized, where there's an expectation that you don't question authority, where we want people not to question and just do what is told. This can create that institutional stupidity in the fact that we have very talented people who can identify issues and solve problems, but essentially we're asking them to be stupid because of the way that we have structured our organization. In that case, we are underutilizing those employee knowledge and skills. So what do? Well, it's really about streamlining our process and removing the poor quality issues and inefficiencies that are the underlying problems within our organization. So if you think about this picture here at the bottom, for companies that have a higher profit margin and prices are high, then they have a buffer, right? This buffer protects them from the poor quality issues and the inefficiencies. So if we think about a company that works in oil production in Fort McMurray, well, when oil prices are high, then it doesn't matter if we're doing things inefficiently. And it doesn't matter that, we don't properly maintain or take care of our vehicles. We just get new ones when the other ones stop working as well. So you can think of those as the big rocks. And the inefficiencies, the poor quality, those are the big rocks. And as long as we have high prices, good profit margin, as long as things are going well, we have that buffer that's protecting us and not even letting us see really those inefficiencies and quality problems. From an inventory perspective, if we have lots of excess in terms of materials, in terms of the amount we produce, that also creates that buffer. That's that extra water on top that helps hide the inefficiencies and the poor quality. Well, if you truly want to be lean, then we need to be able to operate and be profitable even when prices are lower. And we need then to be able to, to do well, even if we don't have a bunch of excess inventory. Well, if you just simply were in scenario B in this picture here, where you can see where we have less inventory, where we have less profit margins, prices are lower, then the problem is it exposes all the rocks. So if you think about in the oil industry, when prices fall, it's only then that these companies really start to have to look at their efficiencies and their waste and how they are performing and whether they are quality, because it doesn't get exposed until the prices start to fall. Well, if your organization is more lean, then you can operate and be profitable at lower prices. You can do it with less inventory because you've actually removed the underlying issues, those rocks. And so you can see this in picture C. So how do you go about doing this? How do you make your organization more efficient and have better quality? Well, we talked about some of those wastes were that we were producing too much. We were doing things that didn't add value. And we had a lot of excess inventory, a lot of work in process, a lot of inefficient and time-wasting activities. So what we want to do is streamline the process. So we want to distribute our workloads evenly across the steps in our process. And as we talked before, we don't want to have, like in image B here, where we have unnecessary transportation. We're moving around all of the materials. We also have the concern in image D in terms of bottlenecks to slow down the process, causing there to be a lot of waiting. So one of the solutions that we get from lean manufacturing or just in time is a compromise between a process layout, B, and a product layout, D, to have a more cellular layout. So this allows us to group together people who are doing similar work, but it also has components of that assembly line, which means then we can help in terms of improving the efficiencies by distributing the work across the stations. We can move material through in what we call smaller lot sizes. So think about this as batches in terms of your production process. If we move things through in smaller groups or quantities, then it's a continual process through. Whereas if we were trying to push through a large quantity, then you come up to the machine or the step in the process that can't handle that large quantity, and then everything slows down, and then you have a bunch of inventory that's just sitting there. You have people on the other side of the bottleneck who are just waiting. So we want to make that a much more smoother progression through. We want to reduce the setup times, so we have that nice continual work through. We want to standardize the process and simplify it to just those value-added activities. We want to reduce the amount of inventory we have on hand, so we're not paying for storage where it's arriving just when we need it through our process. We're increasing our flexibility. And we are looking at, can we improve the quality and prevent the defects before they happen so that we don't have to redo them or check them multiple times and have inefficient work methods. So if we want to analyze how we're doing in terms of eliminating these wastes and being more lean, we can create a SIPOC diagram. So SIPOC diagram, SIPOC, starts with who are your suppliers? What are your inputs? Then what's your process? And you can see here a process flow diagram. And then what are the outputs? Who are our customers? And then they've added here in terms of what are requirements or restrictions. So here's a car dealership. The suppliers, we have those who are going to wash the cars. We have the gas station nearby who's going to help us with gas for the cars. And then, of course, we have the manufacturer of the vehicles. Our input is going to be a car that is clean, that has fuel, and we may have some additional options packages that we're able to add to the vehicle. So then we have the process for selling the car, walking through our process flow diagram. And you'll notice that it's a simplified process flow diagram here. It doesn't have all the decisions and components, just to kind of outline the key steps. Then what's the output? Okay, well, if we negotiate for someone to buy a car, there's going to be a payment. There's going to be some paperwork to show that they are the owner of the vehicle. There's going to be some kind of service contract maybe tied to this agreement. They're going to get oil changes, or maybe there's some additional options packages that they had purchased that need to be changed on the vehicle. And then we have our customers. So our customer is going to be those who buy the car. In this case, there are other parties to the agreement, of course, because if you purchase the car, you're also going to need to get it approved with a license plate. And so you have here the Department of Motor Vehicles. And if we're adding in those option packages, we have our service department helping with that as well. And then we have any requirements or restrictions here. Paperwork has to be filed within a certain amount of time, certain requirements in terms of how we process any of the financing and those types of things. So we build a SIPOC diagram. What we want to do is look at where can we improve the process, the different parts of the value chain in terms of making it more lean. So then we're coming back to our 8 wastes. Where can we reduce the waiting, the unnecessary transportation? Where can we find more efficient methods? Where can we reduce quality concerns? Where can we make sure we are properly utilizing our employee knowledge and skills? And so as we go back and we look at combining our inputs, our process, the outputs itself, involvement of our customers, where can we be more lean and more efficient? So perhaps we could work with our suppliers and use a more just-in-time process. And so if we can better forecast with our suppliers what the demand is going to be in terms of sales of cars, then we can make sure that they arrive when we need them. And so that they're not sitting on the lot for a long period of time. We also can forecast demand together so we don't get too many cars delivered, more than we need. So that's going to reduce then any overproduction. And it is going to reduce any unnecessary transportation if we bring in the type of vehicles that are needed for our client market. So many dealerships now will trade cars with other dealerships. So if you're 4 dealers, you may trade them across if they have one with the color or the features that your customer wants, and you have one their customer wants. Well, all of that has to be transported. So we can reduce unnecessary transportation if we better understand what colors and features the customers in our location are going to want. We also want it to be available when our customers want it. So there's not waiting. We place an order for a vehicle and you have to wait 6 months for it to arrive. We want to make sure that the vehicles we are offering have the options packages our customers want, because otherwise we're going to have to remove features, add features to vehicles. And so this, of course, is going to be over processing if we have to make changes, and is it inefficient methods if we are having to swap out features on vehicles. We also want to make sure that the vehicles we bring in and those that are available for our customer to buy are quality. There are no issues. So when it comes in, as we start to evaluate the ones that arrive and prepare it for the customer, we want to make sure that if there are any issues on the vehicle, they are addressed before the customer has to point them out. So again, looking for ways to reduce waste and be more lean in our process, because everything we do add value.